This is a second video on understanding beauty. We talked in the last one about symmetry versus balance, where balance really should take precedence over symmetry unless symmetry is causing a deformity. In quick review, balance means how each part of the face works with the other. We're now going to talk about how you and I interact with each other. How do you visualize a beautiful woman or a handsome gentleman? You say, well, I can tell that. I don't know exactly what the rules are. And what I was trying to do is tell you before in the last video, scrap the rules. There isn't necessarily these perfect harmonious blend of things that follow a certain geometry, but we know beauty when we see it, as they say, right? Well, how do you evaluate yourself versus other people evaluating you? Remember my end goal is not just to make you happy in a micromanaging fashion, but when someone looks at you, they just go, wow, you look good. I don't know why you look good, but you just look fantastic. How do we get to the level of, wow, you look good? Well, let's think about a book. My colleague presented this information. I thought it was actually quite brilliant, which is the idea of blink. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell. Actually, he has a new book coming out in a couple of weeks called The Outliers. But Malcolm Gladwell's book called Blink is the idea that when you look at something or whatever it may be in life, you engage in that perception in a blink of an eye, and you make a judgment that oftentimes is correct very quickly. So when you see a handsome gentleman, a beautiful woman, even at 10, 20 feet away, in a blink of an eye, you can tell that they look good. And that's what the impact I'm trying to achieve, which is to blink and create a beautiful result for you. But oftentimes, what's very interesting is when you look at yourself, you're very close to the mirror, you're scrutinizing all the details, there's this little flaw here. What's interesting is about 80% of women, I can tell you the top 3 wish lists that they have. And this is, again, I use a 20% escape clause because it may be wrong. But in 80% of the cases, number 1 is something around their mouth, either an asymmetric upper lip, a thin upper lip, or a crease around the lip. Those 3 things are usually number 1. Number 2, some kind of crepiness on the upper eyelid unless they've had an eyelid procedure, some little thing there. And 3 is some little dot somewhere on their face. And usually that's the case in most times. But remember, what you're seeing in a micromanaging level, oftentimes no one else can see. And it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to evaluate your face through this microscopic level. And I can promise you one thing, step 10 feet away from the mirror and ask yourself, can you still see it? The only reason you can is because you so scrutinize that area that now you're straining to look for it. Of course, if you're looking for it, you probably will see it. And you say, well, I look at a photograph, every time I see this little tiny flaw, it bothers me. Well, that's because you become obsessed with that little area. What I want you to start thinking about is, how do you judge someone else? And you say, well, Doc, you know, all I care about is to make me happy. I don't care about someone else. But remember one thing, we're not Robinson Crusoe. We don't live on an island. We interact with other people. If at the end of the day, let's talk about aging face, for example, you come in with your laundry list and I fix all these little micro flaws that don't mean anything, and by the time you go out and you see someone says, are you tired or angry? Are you sad? And you're not, because I haven't done the job that I needed to do to make you look better, because you're focused on the small picture. I want to create a blink effect where someone looking at you just says, wow. And the good thing is I have an eye to understand what are the major areas to work with blink. Now, if you ultimately say, look, Doc, you need to fix these 3 things. That's what I came in for. That's all I care about. That's what I think creates beauty. We can do it still. It's up your prerogative. But I first have to outline for you what the most important things are. So my ultimate goal is for you is to create a wow effect where if you look at my before and afters, there should be a wow effect. Not, oh, but how come she still has a crease there? Don't judge my before and afters that way. Don't judge yourself that way. Judge yourself through Gladwell's thesis, and it's a great book to read, called Blink.